Riding gravel is brilliant. Getting away from tarmac, getting away from cars, and just generally adding a little bit of spice to your riding. It is, however, worth trying to pick up 1 or 2 tips just to really help you get the most out of it. If you're coming from a lifetime spent riding on the road, then let me prepare you with one key fact. Riding on gravel is harder. Now, it's simply just a case of greater resistance from the surface, and therefore it does mean that you end up going slower. It doesn't mean that gravel riding is not as fun. Far from it, in fact. It is often far more exhilarating. But you do need to be aware of it for one very important reason, and that is that when you're planning a gravel ride, you won't be able to go as far as you would do on tarmac in the same time, perhaps 65 or 70% of the distance. Although, it does very much depend on what type of gravel road you're riding on. Yes, because not all gravel is created equal. You will quickly learn to recognise the different types that there are. Pea gravel, slippery on corners and when braking, otherwise fine. Sand, moist and compact, fine. Dry, difficult to corner. Deep, best avoided. Grit, grippy, good. Rocks, not much grip, chance of punctures, avoid where possible. Each type has different characteristics to ride over, but the golden rule is to always look for the firmest and smoothest gravel that you can ride on. It's going to be faster, it's going to be more comfortable, and it's also going to give you more grip when it comes to things like cornering and braking. Now, it might be that the whole road is like that, in which case you can treat it just as you would tarmac or pavement road. However, when the surface is inconsistent or loose, you're going to need to adjust your riding style to accommodate for it. Always scan ahead to make sure that you're riding on the best surface that you can. Generally, it'll be the path most travelled, whether that's by cars or bikes or even feet. The more traffic that rolls over it, the more likely the surface will be polished free of loose stones, giving you more grip and more control. Now, as well as looking out for sections with more grip, you'll also be more likely to spot hazards like holes or indeed rocks. Now, in terms of actually where you want to look, avoid looking too closely towards your front wheel, because that way you're not going to have enough time to react to anything that you do see. However, in terms of an exact distance, it varies depending on how fast you go. So instead of thinking of it in terms of an absolute, why not think of it in terms of time? So look 2 seconds ahead of you down the trail. And that'll mean that you don't have to remember too much when you're going really fast, but it will give you enough time to react, change lines, and slow down. A knock-on effect of looking for the smoothest, grippiest sections is that you might actually not be able to take your usual line through corners, like the racing line, so starting wide, clipping the apex, and then going wide on the exit. And that's because you may well find that you have to cross a really loose section of gravel just when you're cornering really, really hard, meaning that either the front end will wash out or it'll leave you running wide on the exit. So instead, the alternatives are perhaps to cut all the way through on the inside. That would certainly be the simplest option. Or, more advanced, would be to actually unweight the bike as you're going over the really loose section, meaning that when your weight compresses back through it, you'll be maximising the traction that you have at your disposal. The same principles apply when climbing, except that instead of needing grip to turn or to brake, we need grip to help us actually keep moving forwards. Avoiding the loosest sections is a great place to start, but you're also going to need to think about your actual technique on the bike. The difference in grip that you get between climbing in and out of the saddle is really, really significant. So avoid climbing out of the saddle where you can. Instead, you want to keep as much weight over the rear tyre as possible, although you may find that on super steep climbs, your front wheel starts to lift. If you are struggling to keep the front end down, then just bend your elbows to get your chin as close to the bars as possible, and then shift your weight forward on the saddle. We haven't touched on equipment yet, but I do find that climbing is one of those instances where I'm really glad having a bit of tread on my tyres. I actually don't mind cornering even on complete slicks, but when you're trying to get a little bit of grip to move forward, then something on your tyres will definitely be a benefit, even if it's just a file tread like I've got on these Continental semi-slicks. It is going to take you a little bit longer to slow down on gravel. There is a very real risk that you either get a rear wheel skid or, in fact, a front wheel skid as well. Now, we always advise against braking during cornering when on tarmac, and on gravel it's even more important than that. You will quite quickly find that your back end can step out, giving you a little bit of oversteer, or worse still, that your front end washes out as well. So the golden rule about braking on gravel is do it in a straight line and do it carefully. Actually, who are we kidding? Sometimes it's great to get the back end out. Skids are cool. Skids are definitely not for kids. Please skid responsibly. Only skid in areas that are not ecologically or geologically sensitive. Remember to replace all gravel after your skid. We've touched on one aspect of equipment already, your tyre choice, but actually lowering the pressures inside them will also give you more grip as well as improve your comfort. However, you might want to consider fitting bigger tyres if the trails that you're riding are particularly rough. Otherwise, you'll find yourself quite susceptible to punctures. Running tubeless is always a good option on gravel as well. Another aspect to consider is your gearing. We touched on it at the beginning that riding on gravel roads does tend to be slower, and you'll also find that actually the climbs are probably going to be steeper as well because they're not on well-made, well-governed roads. So to combat that, you might want to fit a larger cassette at the back, so up to a 36, maybe even a 42, and also consider running super compact chain set at the front. So this one is 48-32, but you can go smaller than that, 46-30, and maybe even a 28 in a ring as well. Now, this whole video has been about riding on gravel, and with good reason. More and more people are buying gravel bikes, there's a burgeoning gravel racing scene, but you shouldn't feel that you are limited to just riding on gravel. Far from it, in fact. Any surface is fair game, be it hard-packed dirt or grass, and of course, pavement. Although, I will say, if you get super gnarly, and yes, that is actually a word, you would probably be better off on a mountain bike. Anyway, back to gravel. Those golden rules that we've talked about in this video do hold true no matter what type of gravel you're riding on. You should always look ahead, look for the smoothest, fastest and grippiest lines, and be prepared to actually change your riding technique from what you would do on tarmac, be that cornering or braking or climbing. Do make sure that you give this video a big thumbs up if you've been enjoying riding on gravel, and get involved in the comment section as well. Tell us what other gravel content you would like to watch. And if you're in the market for another video right now, why not check out something a little bit different again, bike packing in Morocco.